Good morning. This is Jason Dean coming live at you again for another Film Fanatic show. It is January 1st. It is the first of the new year, 2024. So, happy new year to all the other fellow film fanatics in the universe. And yeah, I hope things are going good. I hope everybody had a cool, safe, but crazy night, as one usually does. I had a very mellow New Year's Eve. This was one of the most mellow New Year's, but it was actually really cool. I I had a big recording session in the morning yesterday. We started pretty early, and I got up super early in the day, which I don't usually normally do get up that early. And then so I got ready and then went to the recording session, and we it took us about which is a typical thing. It takes you when you set up to do recording. It usually takes a few hours before you're kind of ready and situated, all the mics placed and everybody's ready. It usually takes about 2 or 3 hours or so before you can start actually recording and seeing what happens. So that was the case yesterday. We set up a bunch of mics, and we did all of the tests and mic checks and all those things, and that took about close to 3 hours in the morning. And then by the time it was time to start trying to record, or when we actually started recording was around 1:32, and then we went most of the day. Feels like we got some stuff done, some good stuff done, and then we took a little bit of a break, listened to some of the recordings, and then went back, did some more recording, and we recorded for quite a while. It was definitely a long full day. And then tonight we're gonna do another night of recording. We're gonna start in the late day or evening tonight, and it's nice because everything is set up, so we don't have to. We were able to leave everything as is, so we'll basically when we go back to the studio, we'll be able to just go right into recording. So, and we'll be a little bit more refreshed, I think. So, very excited about that. And so then after that, I was gonna go out and do some stuff. I like to go out and do things, and to see bands and music, and I had gone out the night before New Year's to see a friend's band, and it was great. I got home pretty late, a little bit later than I thought. Had a couple of beers, and it was a really great night. My friend's band was playing in Rockland, and that was great. That was super fun. So I kind of got that out of my system, I guess, to a degree. But then New Year's, there were a bunch of things, going on, which was nice to see. There were a lot of different options, but truthfully, nothing really sparked my interest, made me want to really go out. There was definitely some quality things going on, but it was nothing that was really, my cup of tea. And I was pretty tired at the end of the session. I came home, had a gigantic nap, relaxed for a while, then I went over to my folks for dinner, and that was about it. I went over there. We had a nice dinner. We watched some movies and just chilled out, and it was nice. It was nice, but it would have been cool to do something a little bit wild and crazy, but I don't know. It just wasn't in the cards, I guess. But it was still a great New Year's. So today's show is on the two movies that we watched last night, and this is the first review of 2024. It's hard to believe. New Year's is always a funny thing for me. I have kind of a mixed thing around New Year's. I love New Year's Eve. Uh, the anticipation around it, but it's always I always feel like New Year's is as a whole, as a holiday, or as the celebration aspect around it. I don't know. It always seems a little bit overrated and overly hyped. I don't know. Like, I love Christmas. I get really into the whole Christmas thing. I really love Thanksgiving. And Halloween being my favorite holiday. So I love the holiday season. I'm totally into it. But I've always felt like New Year's is like kind of a weird melancholy time, but it's like it always seems anticlimactic. compared to other like festivities that go on. I don't know. I don't know what it is, and it's like I get into it, but then I kind of don't. Whereas like Christmas or Thanksgiving, I you know when I get into the mood, I'm totally into it, and I love every aspect of it. So anyway, but today's show is the first review for 2024. So last night I had gotten my mom a couple of movies. My I've always said my family are they're also my especially my mom and dad are very much into film. Especially my mom. My mom's really into horror. She was actually a guest on this show last year now, and she probably was the most important or integral person in my life that kind of got me into film and horror movies. So I had gotten her a couple of movies for Christmas, and we watched them last night. And it was kind of a cool thing. It was basically the original film and then its sequel, and we watched them both back to back. And the first movie we watched, which I saw in the theater back when it came out in 2016, and that is a really good, really awesome movie called Don't Breathe. It was directed by Fede Alvarez. Really great cast: Stephen Lang, Jane Levy, Dylan Minnette, and Daniel Zavatov, and Christian Zengia. Really cool movie. It's the whole premise is about this gang of thugs, if you will, or robbers that break into this house, and the owner or the proprietor of the house, played by Stephen Lang, is a ex Navy SEAL Marine guy who is blind, and they go into this job thinking that in this robbery that it's going to be a cakewalk, and the tides really shift, and this film takes all kinds of dramatic turns and changes. It's an awesome movie. I remember seeing this movie in the theater in 2016, and I've seen it once or twice since then. I like Stephen Lang. He's good. He's a really good actor. He's got great stage presence. He's probably most well known for being in the Avatar movies. He's really great in those films. But I've seen him in other films, but he's great. He's got a really great in camera presence. He's a really good action star, and I think he's got some good acting chops. He's really awesome in this movie. And I am a big fan of the director, Freddie. Fede Alvarez. He's got some cool movies under his belt. Probably his biggest film that he ever did. He did the Evil Dead reboot or remake in 2013, which is actually a really, really awesome movie. I haven't seen it in a long time, and that is a movie I do own. I bought it probably about 2 years ago. I bought it on Blu-ray, and I still haven't watched it for whatever reason. But it's an awesome movie, highly original. Just one of the best kind of reboots or sequels to a really beloved horror franchise. Of course, it was produced by Sam Raimi. Sam Raimi was also involved with Don't Breathe. He actually produced it. But very, very cool movie. So I, he's Fede Alvarez has also directed a few other movies I have not seen, and he was also responsible for directing and writing and co-writing different films. The thing that I really love about Don't Breathe, like the movie is highly atmospheric. It's really beautifully shot, very creepy, very scary, and it actually is when you get to the big kind of plot reveal as to what is going on with the movie, and especially around Stephen Lang's character, it's pretty fucked up. It's pretty disturbing, actually. I had not seen it in a couple of years, and I watched it. We watched it last night, and I was like, "Wow, like this movie is kind of fucked up. It's pretty disturbing." It's really the thing that I love about Don't Breathe is the there's lots of scenes where there is like zero dialogue, literally, but and it's a very quiet movie, but it has so much suspense to it. And I love the premise. It's really original. You have this guy who is blind, but he is a fighting specialist, more or less, highly skilled, but he is blind and he is outnumbered. And it all what I love about this film is it all takes place in this confined space, in his house. That is this really kind of dark, creepy, atmospheric setting. There's all these corridors, there's like these hidden passageways, there's all of these scenes that involve this really long staircase. And it's really, really well done. The direction of this film is pretty awesome. It definitely has like a Hitchcock vibe to it, but I definitely think that this movie is definitely a horror film. I think it's a horror thriller. I think it's probably more of a horror film more than anything else. It's really raw. What I love about it is it's got this really raw, almost low budget quality. Even though it does have a big budget to it, it has this real rawness to it. It really the other thing that this film I feel is what's really influenced by, and what it does really remind me of is the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It has like this level of suspense, and there's a lot of camera work and the way the film is shot that it really reminds me of the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And of course, that movie was shot by Daniel Pearl. He was the cinematographer, of course, directed by Tobe Hooper. But Daniel Pearl did, just a spectacular job with filming that film, shooting it. And there's all these great long kind of panning shots in that movie, and it always gives you, every time I watch the original, it just gives you such this sense of depth and atmosphere and creepiness. And the building, the house, the family, where the characters live in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the house, it's so well shot that it acts the house into itself is kind of a character. And I feel like uh, that's the same thing for this movie. I feel like the house, the setting for Don't Breathe is so strong that it really acts like its own character. And again, it's very disturbing, especially the second or third act, the big plot reveal. It's got a lot of cool twists and turns, highly, highly suspenseful, and it's kind of a shocking movie. There's some things about it that are kind of shocking and definitely disturbing. But I think it's a great film, and I remember seeing it in the theater, and I really loved it, and I've seen it two or three times. I don't own it on Blu-ray. I think it would be worth buying on Blu-ray because it's a really really great movie, and I definitely consider Don't Breathe to be a first and foremost I would definitely say it's a horror film. So right after we finished watching Don't Breathe, we decided to watch Don't Breathe 2, which was the sequel that came out in 2021. And the set that I bought my mom for Christmas basically was the two had both movies in the set. It was a DVD collection. So we decided to watch the second one right after, and it was directed by Radu Samigaz. It came out in 2021, a couple of years ago, and the director Radu Sayaguz, I never heard of him before. Um, kind of looked him up, and there's actually really nothing to his credit. I think he was the director of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre film that was, I think, a Netflix original that came out a couple of years ago, which I heard was not very good. But other than that, I did not know much about him as a director. And to be honest, I had seen a couple of reviews for Don't Breathe 2, and they were pretty bad. They kind of trashed it. So it was a movie I was not very excited to see. Of course, one always has to make up their own minds when they see movies. But, generally, if you get, when a film comes out, and generally if the overall reviews are positive or negative, and especially, if you have a few critics or people that kind of regard their opinions as being, pretty smart, pretty educated, it says something. And usually, that's the general consensus of something for a new film, whether it's really good or really bad, kind of sums it up, what it will probably be like. And this movie, Don't Breathe 2, was, I have to say, was absolutely terrible. It was, for me, again, Stephen Lang was back in the lead role. Other than that, it was a whole different cast. And the thing that was so rough about this movie was that they tried so hard, like it was so obvious, they tried so hard to basically make the same movie, but to try to have, not success, and not a successful way at all. They tried to have a little bit of a creative license around that, since this was a sequel. They introduced a lot of characters in this new film. They introduced all of these other subplots. They introduced Stephen Lang, who is now apparently a father, and his daughter is the lead role in this movie. And the writing for this film is just awful. There's literally no suspense in this movie. They tried so hard to replicate what was achieved in the first one. There's literally scenes and plot twists that happen in the first one that they literally replicated for the second one, and they are and it was done so badly that it's just a total disaster. This movie is so bad, like it's just terrible. The other thing that's weird about this movie is Don't Breathe, the original, is pretty graphic. It's not like it's not over the top as far as gore, but it's definitely like the scenes of violence are very, very effective. And again, this Don't Breathe it's got lots of elements about the film itself that is incredibly disturbing and pretty bonkers crazy. But it's so raw. I love that it's just got this dirty kind of raw quality to it. And this film just does not have that. The other thing, I think, I don't know what they were thinking as far as making the sequel, but this film is much more gory. It's much more graphic. It has there is limbs being chopped off and heads being smashed and caved in. It's much more brutal in that regard. And I think what they did, the only thing I can think of after watching this movie, or I should say while I was watching this movie, was that, they just didn't know what to do. This Don't Breathe, the first one, was a very successful movie. It did really, really well in the box office, as far as I remember. And it did really well on Blu-ray, DVD, when it got released in physical form. And, so I feel like this movie was literally just, all it was a cash grab. Like, they just wanted to try to capitalize on the success, and just milk it for what it's worth. They clearly had no story. They had no idea of what they were going to do. They just wanted to take this character played by Stephen Lang and make more money off of what was started. there was, I feel like the filmmakers going into this sequel were completely in the dark. It feels like they had literally no story, not one original idea, and they just took the key scenes in the first one that worked so well and literally paint by numbers, like 1 through 10, tried to replicate it. And it's a disaster. Like it's so bad. Stephen Lang's character in the first one, he has this like deep relationship with his dog because he's blind. They try to do that in this film. They try to take the thing of where there's this big plot reveal towards the middle or third act of the original, where it gets highly disturbing, and there's a real interesting plot twist that you don't really see coming. They did that same exact thing with the second one, involving this girl's mother, and it's so bad, it's so terrible. And then along with that, they introduce a whole plethora of characters that are in this house, and basically they're trying to replicate this whole thing of the first one, and you could care less about any of the characters. The first one, again, the characters are great. You're given just enough information. You actually care. I felt you're invested in seeing what's going to happen to each of the characters. You care about each person you see on the screen to some capacity, but with this film, they're just there on the screen. There's nothing fleshed out as to giving you any information or which would lead to you caring about any of the characters on the screen. It's literally just a cash grab, and so disappointing. And like, this is a movie that I don't even know if it was in a theatrical run. Like, it's one of those really bad movies that's just like direct to video. And I get amazed that studios waste money like this. Like, they literally, and as far as I know, the sequel was a turd on arrival. I don't think it made any money. I don't think it had any success whatsoever. And I just like, and I'm again, I always think what goes into the minds of these people that run these studios and their mentality. And of course, all it is just, pure greed, and there's no idea or concept of like putting out a quality product, just making money. But it's just, for this film, it's just so blatantly obvious. It's painful. And I'm just like thinking about, like, say when this movie was wrapped and it was done and they were actually presenting the film to the studio and they watched the film before it was released theatrically, and they're all sitting in some giant boardroom watching this movie. And I'm like, doesn't anybody have like two brain cells in their head while they're watching this, and some kind of idea of being subjective as to what they're watching? And I'm just like, what the fuck are these people thinking? And it's just such an utter waste of money. And and I think this movie is so bad, and it happens a lot with sequels, but this movie is so bad that it almost like diminishes the quality of the first one, because the first one, like I said, is a really good movie, really well done, and it's so bad that it almost lessens the impact of that movie, because it's especially with what they did with the sequel, where they're literally replicating it. But clearly with no story or or concept to pull from, just milking it for or from the successful predecessor. It's astounding to me. So I would say definitely go out if you haven't seen it. A lot of people have seen it by now, but Don't Breathe, the original, really good movie, really great horror suspense film. Definitely recommend it. It is a movie that I would love to buy on Blu-ray. I've never gotten it on Blu-ray. I've never seen it on Blu-ray. It would be definitely worth the purchase. But as far in regards to Don't Breathe 2, I would not even waste your fucking time. It's a headache. It's 2 hours, and it's super long. It's longer than the first one, or at least it feels like it is. It drags ass. It just goes on, and they just try to make up for the lack of story with just trying to put in more gore as possible, and it's so ridiculous. It's so bad, and it was so bad that it. I was in a good mood last night, and it put me in a bad mood afterwards. So I don't recommend in any way, shape, or form to see the sequel, Don't Breathe 2. It's a piece of shit. So Happy New Year again, and we will see you sometime soon. Peace.